Hello, and welcome to another fully live news episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Kody Kinsey. I'm a security researcher at Varonis, and today we have finally the long prophesied return. About this event for weeks, but finally, Kilian has returned to us. Kilian, I hope you enjoyed your extended vacation, and then also all of your other things you had to go do, including being sick for a week. So good to see you back and in good health. And yeah, we're excited to have you here.
Thank you. It's great to be back. I've been looking forward to it. I've been not that, I didn't enjoy being off, but I was looking forward to getting in here, talking and hearing from everybody. So I missed it, shockingly. Believe it or not. Somebody
A
missed
lot
work,
happens.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot happened. A lot's been going on. So, I mean, I kind of feel like we're almost going to be getting you up to date with some of these stories that we're
I
doing like
believe it.
a second check-in on. But yeah, so we've got lots to cover this week. Good to see everybody in the chat. I see, of course, James and Z, and yeah, we also had some people who were in our Discord server. So just wanted to shout that out. Our Discord server has kind of gotten pretty lively. So if you want to join our Discord server, I can see right now, I will put up, let's see. I will put up our live chat section. We've had a lot of great contributions here. You can go to nugget.lol, nugget.lol, if you want to jump in on there. But yeah, we had some people throwing in some stories to talk about this week, which I absolutely will cover. So yeah, lots to go over this week. And we had a very fun stream yesterday where we talked to Angelina about aerospace hacking. And Angelina is going to be doing a workshop tomorrow, I think, at Null Space Labs in person. So if you didn't catch the stream last time, she was talking all about how you can use these free and open source tools to do like aerospace tracking and like decode signals from drones. Lots of great information was in the stream. And of course, the class is going to be live. So check out her aerospace hacking class tomorrow at Null Space Labs in Los Angeles. If you are in the area, and actually, I should probably put that up, huh? If you want to check it out, Null Space Labs, you can go to the meetup group, which was, there we go. That's what I'm looking for. And you can find it, let's see, Cyber Weapons Lab, in-person aviation cybersecurity class. So Angelina proposed this like on 9/11. So I was like, perhaps we could make it more of like a defensive class rather than get the FBI involved here.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good mix. Like she still kept in some labs where you're basically going to be learning how to like drop like a vulnerable drone out of the sky, how to hack aviation, like the in-flight entertainment system, and then some other really cool demos. So always love having Angelina on the show. She did great for our Q&A and answered a lot of really good questions. So if you have any other questions for her, you can always drop them in our chat. She is on our Discord server. But of course, we hope we will have her back again soon. So if any of you make it out to that class, please let us know how it is. I got to go to the last version of this class in person, and it was super fun. Null Space Labs is a great venue. And yeah, it's always a good time. By the way, I love having like feedback on this because I am now like one of those people you see in old timey movies that has like the whole setup like strapped to them with like the drums and like the accordion, whatever. That's me. Like I do this whole stream by myself. I have to audio check myself. I have to like do all this together. And usually we used to have Michael, our production person, and now Michael has been supplemented by people like Z. So Z, thank you for letting us know that Kilian's volume is good today, because we got some feedback that it was very loud from people who actually came to our booth at Black Hat to tell us that. So even though some of you had to come and tell us personally, we do hear you and we appreciate having you on the stream. So yeah, good to see everyone. You were starting to fear that I disappeared. No. We're just, our new starting time seems to be more around 2 p.m. Just because, it gives us a little bit of extra time to prepare, especially if we've got guests that are coming in and doing other stuff. So yeah, don't worry. I haven't been kidnapped. And hey, Michael has and will pop up on the stream again. Michael is currently working for a managed service provider in Montana. I don't know if I can say the name. I think he probably, I don't know if they want me to say the name or they don't want me to say it. So I'll just skip it for now. But he's actually being a virtual CISO. So he's taking what he learned on the show and actually advising smaller companies like business, like banks and like local stuff, like on their cybersecurity posture and doing presentations to their boards and stuff. So really cool. So don't worry, Michael hasn't been taken by the Squatch. So he is a cryptozoologist. He has found another role in cybersecurity he's enjoying a lot. So but yes, every once in a while we do need a little bit of supplementation when it comes to quality on the stream. So thank you for that. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with some of the things we're going to be covering today. First, I guess just because I'm going to be covering it fairly briefly, Kilian, where are you on this? Why are you so small? Kilian? There we go. I'm so sorry.
There I am.
Wow. Okay, now
That's
you're
all
like twice my size, but we'll figure it out somewhere in the middle. So the Raspberry Pi 5 came out a couple days ago, and I have to say I felt a little bit blindsided because all these like cybersecurity and like hardware content creators that I consider myself to be like peers with were like, yeah, I've had this thing for months and I finally get to talk about it. It was like, where is my Raspberry Pi?
Right.
But then again, I also did not ask, and I haven't been making as much like cut out video content
Sure.
lately. So I guess I understand. It just is a sign to me that I need to go out and make more content. But yes, the Raspberry Pi 5 came out. It's really interesting to see what the evolution of the Raspberry Pi looks like. Let's go ahead. Let's take a look at it real quick. So the Raspberry Pi 5 is said by Hackaday to be twice as fast as the Raspberry Pi 4. So you could have two Raspberry Pi 4s and this is still going to be better. So that's a pretty bold and impressive claim. So the official announcement, they have a little video. It's very nice. It goes over the features and such. You can't hear it. But yeah, all right. So we got 4 gigabytes or 8 gigabytes of RAM, quad core processor. So that's pretty cool, I have to say. We've got new peripherals. So PCIe is something that a lot of people are excited about, although it does, I think, need an adapter to interface with completely. But PCIe is something people wanted. So we also can run 2 4K displays at the same time. So that is pretty sweet. If you're looking to use this in some sort of crazy, like multi-display setup, it uses the RPI-1, new Raspberry Pi silicone. That's great. I'm interested in this. I'm definitely going to get one. I want to check it out because I have a range of applications for Raspberry Pis, and there's the whole family now where I'll use like a Raspberry Pi 0 or 3B, 0W or 3B plus to do very basic command line Linux stuff. So if I want to run a Wi-Fi attack tool and I'm willing to load up an operating system that's just command line, I'll totally use like the lower end of the Raspberry Pis. They're great. They're really wonderful for that. If I want to take a step up and I want to run like a media server, or if I want to control a really fancy 3D printer and I want to add like a camera and other stuff to monitor it, that's where I'm going to probably use the higher end of the Raspberry Pi, the Raspberry Pi 4. When I try to use a Raspberry Pi 4 as like a desktop computer, I don't really like it that much. I have to say, it's got some quirks. Like when they originally designed it, they made it so they left out a resistor when, like on the power, on the USB Type-C power spec. So you could only use certain types of chargers with it, which is honestly super annoying. It doesn't work with some of the like nicer USB Type-C ports that you would expect it to work with. And then it also has like micro HDMI, which I have to say, I hate this standard of HDMI so much. These stupid little adapters are so useless. And I have them everywhere. I even have some like, micro HDMI to regular HDMI cables. Unfortunately, it is a very common standard as like a lot of like handheld cameras and other things like use this, but I gotta say, I'm not a huge fan of it. Of course, this seems to be the future. However, I really wish it wasn't because they are stinky in my opinion. And having a little bit of extra real estate to be able to plug in a full HDMI cable, I just wish that was a thing. But anyway, so there are some downsides. So it's funny because it's kind of framed differently. Here it's framed as like an opportunity, and on the Hackaday article, it is framed as a limitation. So let's talk about what is the cost for all this extra power. Well, if you want to use this as a battle station, if you want to load up Linux and have it run comparable to like a laptop or something, maybe a cheaper laptop, but still a laptop, then this is what you're going to have to deal with. One, increased power consumption. So we're up to 12 watts over the peak of 8 watts that the Raspberry Pi 4 was using. So that means you're going to expect to see maybe like specialized chargers and like that the other chargers that you used to have may not work with this Raspberry Pi. So again, we're getting into specialized chargers, which was kind of what I was complaining about with Raspberry Pi 4. Also, this thing gets hot. So like, they're like, oh, yay, we've got the Pi active cooler. Isn't that great? No, it's a necessity. And there's actually specifically like a little plug-in for the fan because they anticipate that this thing is gonna get hot.
Yeah.
So I mean, is that such a surprise? Like as we go up in power, like desktop computers, like laptops, they all have some sort of cooling system. So in this case, like it does make sense that as these computers get more and more powerful, they're going to need some active cooling. So that's kind of the long and short of the Raspberry Pi 5 announcement. It's more powerful as 2 Raspberry Pi 4s, but you're probably going to need a cooler and you're probably going to need a special or at least like a higher rated USB Type-C power supply in order to make it work. So
yeah, I'm pretty excited for this. Because I haven't played around with one for a little while and I had fairly limited use cases. But now with this, I wonder, maybe I could get a little Linux desktop running. Every once in a while, I'll install Linux on something and be like, I'd like to use this more, but it's not quite, I'm pushing the limits of whatever hardware I have. But this seems like it actually might do a pretty good job.
So we got a question from the chat. I wonder if there'll be a Raspberry Pi 500, an updated version of the 400 with a Raspberry Pi inside a keyboard. So what is that? So this is one of my most hated on computers. The Raspberry Pi 400 is a Raspberry Pi, but the industrial type. Okay, so like here's what I think happened, and I could be wrong. This might be speculation, but Raspberry Pi makes a bunch of these different modules, and some of them are like industrial modules. Like they are, I don't really see them, but they're like the these like plugin modules for embedded applications that are like these. Yeah, the Raspberry Pi like compute modules and the Raspberry Pi compute 4S. So these are not friendly for the average user. Therefore, like more industrial applications, but they have like a lot of them and they're easier to make. So the people over Raspberry Pi were like, what can we do with these like industrial modules that are like way cheaper for us to manufacture, but are way less user friendly? They're like, oh, let's just bake them into a keyboard and turn this into like an evolved version of, one of these other ones that you're going to add like, a Raspberry Pi like keyboard and mouse to and whatever else to. Anyway, what they forgot was the mouse. And I don't know if it's because they thought it was too difficult or they just gave up on it. There's not even like a nub, like a trackpad nub, like a ThinkPad has. Like, come on, like this has been done. Maybe the nub, or it's been called other things as well. But maybe that little trackpad that's built in is trademarked or something and they can't use it. But my complaint is you gotta lug a stupid mouse with you everywhere you go. And a lot of these Raspberry Pis, when I use them, I just plug in a keyboard mouse combination, often that's quite small, and that's really all I need for these simple applications. So I really don't like the fact that it requires the mouse, and then it also uses a different wireless card. So because this is like a surface mount, like industrial module, it doesn't use the same wireless card as the other Raspberry Pis do. And as a result, it can't do a lot of the Wi-Fi hacking things that I want to do. So I have to plug in a second Wi-Fi network adapter that is compatible with Kali Linux to let me do packet injection and all the other like hacking stuff I want to do. So from a hacker's perspective, this is a disappointment to me because if it just had a little trackpad and a compatible wireless module, I would take this thing with me everywhere. I would put stickers on it. I would love it. But I have one and it's just like, I haul it out when I need it. But it's really something that I load up like weird operating systems on and like it's a little bit convenient. But frankly, the fact that you need to bring accessories to something that's already embedded in an accessory when there's like definitely like existing versions out there that like take care of this problem. Like I just want to see like an all-in-one that has an HDMI out. You just plug it into HDMI and boom, you got a computer. Like this bringing a mouse, get out of here. Anyway, the question was, I wonder if there's going to be a version of this. I think that as soon as they take the same hardware and bring it over to one of their compute modules or like these little industrial modules, you're going to see something like this. Yes, I think that it totally makes sense. But just realize this is not, as far as I know, this is not a regular Raspberry Pi embedded in a keyboard. It's this flat compute module that's been connected to a circuit board that has all these extra add-ons. And that's really cool, but I don't know. I think they fumbled the bag on this. I wish that it had the ability to just be like plug and play. But anyway, I got a lot of opinions on this. So it seems like people in the chat too though. So Yeah. All right. So we've talked about the Raspberry Pi update. I think that's probably going to be like the biggest, or one of the biggest pieces of news, because how only 5 times has there ever been, a new Raspberry Pi model that comes out. So that's pretty cool. All right. So Kilian, do you know Privacy Badger?
I have heard of it. I can't say I know much more than hearing the name, unfortunately. So this is going to be a good one for me.
Yeah, so at DEF CON last year,
Mhm.
I had it was 2 years ago. I had the privilege of getting to introduce one of the developers of Privacy Badger at the Electronic Frontier Foundation to a group of Norwegian journalists, and he got to talk about a lot of things. He got to talk about like doing research on like all this legal stuff, but also like what Privacy Badger does and like why it's important. So I use it all the time. It is something that allows you to get around a lot of the tracking that is
Mm.
built into the internet. And if you've ever tried to share like a news article or like an item like for sale or something else, and you see just this monstrously long link with like all these random numbers and other stuff, like that is what I'm talking about. So you can imagine like there are a lot of ways that, stringing on like additional like characters at the end of a URL can enable tracking. And what Privacy Badger does whenever it can is chop these down into regular links, remove the affiliate stuff, remove the tracking codes, remove all of that, and make it so that you can not be tracked everywhere you go. And this is really important for privacy. Like without this enabled, it allows all these companies who specialize in tracking to really like fine tune their profile of you as you move around the internet. And it means that they're able to like, on a lot of these websites, watch you go from website to website and stitch together your traffic from a variety of
Mhm.
different places. So highly recommend Privacy Badger. It is a great tool, and they have had some updates. So some of that is fighting the way that Google has adapted to these sorts of measures
Mm.
and making it so that they are blocking a lot of these tracking requests at the network layer instead of just chopping off the links.
Right.
So that is a kind of progressive way of dealing with this problem. Honestly, it is a cat and mouse game.
Right.
Um, and Google's NFS v3 removed the ability to redirect requests using their web request API that Privacy Badger uses. So that makes it a lot harder to design a like an add-on that's able to go in and redirect instead of going from one URL to a different one that's been
Mhm.
chopped down and had the like tracking stuff removed. So this is a great update for anybody who wants to make sure to stay ahead of Google on this kind of cat and mouse game when it comes to being able to track you across the internet. So again, this is not just Google, it's basically all these websites that track you with these sorts of links. The fact that Google broke some of the features of Privacy Badger, hard to know if that, that's deliberate or if they're reacting to other threats here, but really it is their information to lose when it
Right.
comes to like these updates that they're pushing out for Chrome, and then Privacy Badger trying to nerf all the ones that ship your data to Google or other advertisers as much as they
Mhm.
can. So if you use Privacy Badger, make sure to update it. And if you haven't considered it, then I find it to be like 0% disruptive. It causes no issues, and it generally just runs in the background and makes my life better. So it's one of those, it's one of those add-ons that just works, and it's very transparent and it does its job without ever really bothering you. So if you care about privacy, definitely Privacy Badger is one of the things that I recommend installing if you're looking for those sorts of privacy tools. All right. This is just a story I saw popping up. There's a Bloomberg article, but it's like paid, so like I'm not doing that. But this is just talking about the increase in how police are using requests and warrants to Google for specific, like either geofenced information or information
Mhm.
about specific people. This is becoming increasingly common. And over the last year, 60,472 requests were sent to Google,
Wow.
and I believe 80% of them were complied with. So that's pretty high.
Yeah.
You can check out this article if you want to read more of the specific incidents here. But the core point of this article is sometimes this data is wrong. Like Google is a commercial entity; they are not collecting forensic data like on purpose, and there's all sorts
Right.
of things that can go wrong to drag innocent people into investigations. So there have been several documented cases of this, and it's not something that is expected to go away as these sorts of requests for information become more and more commonplace, and more police feel emboldened to just request it, whether or not they have a super solid reason for
Right.
doing so. So yeah, just a note. Again, this is something you can kind of read more on if you're interested in the types of circumstances these warrants can happen in. But as you can see, we've got a lot of other news to cover this week, so I'm going to keep it at that for that one. All right, so we've got another actively exploited Chrome 0-day. And when we have actively exploited Chrome or iOS 0 days, what does that usually mean, Kilian? Do you know?
Oh, well, a round of patching, maybe a round of blaming, and a
Yeah.
round of updates. I mean, certainly. And then 0 days, of course. I mean, exploits, things happening, bad things happening.
Yep. So when I see these stories, I know a lot of people are going to have to do updates. And also, there's probably a cyber mercenary group somewhere selling something to somebody.
Right.
So this seems to be the case. They're not really going into details here about like what the attack looked like. You can also expect that the details on this are going to be restricted for a while. Now, they said that it was exploited in spyware attacks. And this is something that in general, yes, you're looking at like web browsers, you're looking at
Right.
this is like an initial access vector into someone's like personal device in order to deliver a piece of spyware and monitor them. And this is where the big money is right now for these 0 days.
Yeah.
These companies will develop these 0 days that are used to target dissidents or journalists and people like that. And it tends to be something then that has to be identified and patched very, very quickly. But yeah, as I've said a couple times before, this is not going to go away. This is going to persist on devices that are stuck on older versions of apps and be something that is able to be used. So typically when these 0 days are burned like this, they become less expensive and go on to the secondary gray market. And you'll see them pop up in all sorts of other countries or other places where these older devices are still present.
Yep.
All right, next up. Bitwarden is a tool for keeping your passwords safe that is generally well regarded by security researchers and people who, want like an open source alternative to other password managers. But unfortunately, there is a campaign going on actively targeting these people seeking this software that instead delivers a tool called ZenRat. And this is a remote access tool that is very persistent, very sneaky, and in this case, focused on Windows users. And how do we know this? Well, if you attempt to go to the download site and you don't have a Windows computer, it will instead redirect you to a random article instead of delivering the actual malware. So this is also I believe it was a convincing lookalike, a bitwarden.com website that's designed to make people to think that they are at the correct website. Often people do like typo squatting and other things that make it look as though this is correct, or they'll mask the URL after a redirect. In this case, looked pretty legitimate and downloaded an executable that did install Bitwarden, but also installed the remote access tool as well. It looks as though that it was downloaded from crazygames.com. And this is, of course, like a typo squatting attack for crazygames.com. So yeah, just kind of interesting to see that the delivery platform here was, for one, crazygamist.com. And for two, it was so highly targeted at Windows users seeking out a specific piece of software. So kind of a supply chain attack that didn't actually gain access to the actual website distributing the software, but was able to trick some users through some pretty clever means. All right, so that's all I have to say about that one. Just if you have downloaded Bitwarden recently, then first be careful and make sure that you downloaded it from the official website. And there is also a note on here. It checks to see if it's running in a virtual machine or a sandbox. So it does have some reverse engineering like restrictions built in that make it more difficult to analyze for people who would usually be taking a look at this sort of thing. So
what I've learned too is I think a couple of these stories talk about the various ransomware, or in this case malware, checking if it's running a virtual machine. So what that told me is just run everything in a virtual machine and it'll skip you.
Yeah, right. If you are just running everything in a virtual machine, it's going to think you're a researcher and like try to hide all of its secrets. It won't give any of its juicy payloads. Okay, so this is some of the funnier cybercrime industry stories that I've read recently. So why would a ransomware victim get hit by 2 different ransomware gangs within 24 hours. Or what did it say? How many hours? 48 hours.
48, yeah.
You have a guess, Kilian?
I mean, they've got someone selling access to it, obviously, and people like money. Or, I mean, I read the article, so I don't want to get into any spoilers, but hey, maybe you got to encrypt quickly and you don't want to wait for just one piece of ransomware to encrypt everything. Just kick off a whole bunch of them.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. So it seems as though the core of the story is like two-timing initial access brokers. So initial access brokers are people who specialize in just getting in the door. And these may or may not be ransomware affiliates. So the way this works is there's this whole like kind of like food chain going on where you have the company that's being attacked. You have an initial access broker who will get in via social engineering or something else that they specialize in, some technique that they're really, really good at. That's just one tiny piece of this whole operation. Once they get in, one of two things can happen. Either they are a ransomware affiliate, so they just download the software that they have paid for, like upload it to the server that the victim has exposed, and then, you know, take a percentage of the overall amount that comes in using the ransomware brand's infrastructure. That's very common. And then the people at the top who made the ransomware in the first place also get a cut of this transaction. So lots of criminals are kind of cashing in here. The other case is that initial access broker might not be a ransomware affiliate. So they might just go and sell that to a ransomware affiliate gang. So now you have another step in the ladder where this person is turning around and just selling access and they're not getting a cut of the percentage. So they're incentivized to sell this as many times as possible. So that means that you could get a company that's breached, have a post go up on a darknet forum, and have 3 different ransomware gangs all purchase access to this company and then have them kick off at the same time. So the structure behind these ransomware groups is really important here because it's causing these super weird kerfuffles that like I wouldn't think were possible. But okay, one of my favorite stories here, and it's buried somewhere inside of this, is that they were finding in some cases files had been encrypted 5 or more times.
Yes, yeah.
And the reason for this was the initial access broker put up the victim for sale. A bunch of people bought it, and then 2 different ransomware gangs kicked off their ransomware at the same time. So both of these ransomware gangs are running their ransomware encryptors, and the encryptors are finding each other's files. Being like, that's not the right file extension that tells me that I've already encrypted this file. So basically these encryptors start like fighting each other and start encrypting the same files over and over and over because they keep seeing each other's encrypted files and be like, oh, that's another file for me to encrypt. So this creates like a feedback loop where like 2 attackers are running like tasks that are basically like unending. They're just like forever encrypting on top. And for one, it totally bones the victim who now has to not only negotiate with 2 attackers, but would need to go through like a ridiculous amount of decryption rounds in order to get this data back. It just makes the likelihood of being able to get a resolution on this like so much lower that so if that's any indication of how bad like ransomware attacks have gotten, the fact that like people have gotten hit 3 times in 2 months is really kind of an example of how this is becoming a crowded field in some cases. Now, another cause of this happening is like other infected devices on the network that are like lurking, waiting to basically rebound and restart the attack once the environment has been relatively cleaned up and stood up again. So let's say you restore from your backups, you think that you got everything, but there's something still on the network and it's able to use its access or use its network connection to kick off the attack all over again. That was also documented in this report.
You know what, Kody, now that you said that, I don't know if maybe somebody like a lot more ambitious than I can figure out how to make this work right. But think about tying up like the ransomware actors with like a honeypot where like you go and encrypt a file and then you have another process on there that just changes the encryption to kind of trap it in a forever encrypting loop where it never gets off wherever that device is or spreads. I don't know. Maybe there's something in that. Maybe there's like a nugget to just screw with them, because if they're wasting their time encrypting, you know, your honeypot or whatever and never progressing, maybe that'll give us a little time. I don't know. Could be something there.
That's pretty cool. It would be like a ransomware fork bomb. So like every time it goes into a new folder, it spawns 3 more folders it has to go into encrypt after.
There we go. So somebody out there who's a security researcher, there's an idea. Let's see it happen.
Okay. So we have a comment that I want to address, and that is, it seems like running everything in virtual machines really works well for security. Well, okay. You say that. However,
Yes.
there was a story, which by the way is the second big story talking about virtual machines. Building automation giant Johnson Controls was hit by a ransomware attack, and guess what they targeted? VMware ESXi servers, the exact same type of servers that were recently targeted in the ransomware attacks in Las Vegas. So I'm not going to say that running things in a virtual machine is always going to work out for you. Unfortunately, there are going to be some cases here where virtualization actually makes it very enticing for these ransomware gangs that have started focusing on virtualized services as what they are attacking. So this was Weekend Cyber Attack, something that took down a lot of their services. And yeah, this is something where they've released a statement that they are currently experiencing IT outages, may limit some customer applications, actively mitigating any potential impacts, and will remain in communication. So we don't have any resolution on this yet. So far, we have statements like the computer system crashed over the weekend, manufacturing everything is down. And yeah, it seems as though this was something done by a group called the Dark Angels. They have been active since, I believe, like 2020, something like that.
Yeah, fairly recently in terms of like these gangs, or maybe it was 2022. I think they've been around for a little while, but I don't think that they've made massive news.
Yeah. Yeah, and this also seems to be a group that is doing a double exploitation attack, and that means that they have not only encrypted files, they've also exfiltrated them, and they're threatening to leak that information. So it looks like they're demanding $51 million, and that is to provide both a decryptor and to delete the stolen data. And they're claiming they have 27 terabytes of corporate data, and that they've encrypted the VMware images. So yes, not always a sureproof way of staying safe online with the virtualized system. So yes, while we have identified that sometimes having a virtualized system will stop malware, clearly that is not always the case,
right?
Because this this certainly speaks to the contrary. All right, so next up, what do we got? Oh, yeah. So we've got a teenage member of, oh wait, I think it was 22. Yeah. We've got a 22-year-old member of Shiny Hunters. This was a cybercrime group that kind of like did a lot of like manual exploitation rather than like these automated like ransomware games. Like they manually kind of broke into a lot of their victims, went through the data, looking for credentials and other ways of getting into more accounts. And if they weren't able to get anybody to pay for access, this kind of initial access broker would then just turn around and just dump everything on darknet forums in order to get kind of a reputation, and a reputation they got.
Yes.
As a result, they drew a lot of attention, and I'm just kind of interested in the charges here. I believe it was aggravated identity theft, and then wire fraud. So that's what a lot of these cybercrime gangs are getting hit with when they do get arrested: wire fraud and aggravated identity theft. So because this was an initial access broker and not someone who was involved in like deleting or damaging systems, you're not seeing like access to a protected computer system with like intent to damage and some of these other like common computer crimes that people are charged with. But yeah, it's just another example of the kind of prosecutions we're seeing against these initial access brokers and cybercrime gangs that have gained increased notoriety as these cybercrime like networks of business start to build and make more and more money.
Yep.
All right, so we talk about Lazarus hackers a lot, and this is the North Korean affiliated hacking group that often is in the spotlight for their crypto hacks. And in this case, they are deploying new malware. And God, I really like the new bleeping computer and like AI generated images. They're so good. They're so much better than the old ones. But so they're employing new types of malware, and they are also focusing on things besides cryptocurrency. So a lot of the attacks are designed to get around US sanctions and make money for the country, basically. And that's kind of what people expect from this group. But recently they've also seen Operation Dream Job, which is a very kind of a typical campaign for this group. But what's interesting here, it was targeting intellectual property instead of financial gain, as they kind of usually do. So they kind of went around the usual Lazarus playbook here, where they created an opportunity where it made it really easy to do the social engineering attack, even if there were some mistakes or some things that might give red flags. People were willing to overlook them in exchange for a dream job. So this dream job is getting a message from somebody posing as a recruiter at a company like Meta. And this is how the conversation goes. Is this real? Okay, yes, apparently it is real. So you can see there's a couple like maybe red flags that like this speech like maybe doesn't match the style of like what you would expect from this gentleman right here. But in general, this was enough to get some of the employees of the company to download a quiz. So I've got a slightly confusing graphic. They just download the file and then they execute it, and then it it side loads and then it does something malicious. Like this isn't rocket science. I don't know like why, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, they download the freaking file is what they do. And then they run it and it's a bad file and they get infected. It's not terribly complicated here. We don't need all this.
Right. I think the most interesting thing is not even like really captured here. It's the fact that I believe they're like, they would say, hey, do like a programming test for us to prove it for this job. And that's why you download it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the interesting part.
So the context here is literally just like tests that you're supposed to run to show your proficiency in C++. But yeah, the infection vector is not complicated. They're not using a 0-day.
Right.
They're not like, like hitting your phone with some like untraceable like message that backdoors your phone. They're literally just tricking you into thinking you've got a sweet job offer and you got to do this quiz first before you're able to accept it. So you download it, it infects you, and then there's all these capabilities that it has on your system. It can send system details, update communication intervals, stop communication execution, send byte commands, update the configuration of the system, wait for the next command, update communication interval, execute provided shellcode, and download and decrypt files from the C2 server. I think it's this one that also, if it loses connection to the C2 server, it can trigger itself to automatically delete itself and like leave no trace. So that's something that's becoming more common. A lot of the time, if you're not able to, detect that you're in a virtual machine, like what can you do if you're running in a sandbox environment and, you're a piece of malware that doesn't want to get reverse engineered? Well, if you don't get that connection you're expecting from the C2 server, you can erase yourself. And that's a capability we're starting to see baked into some of these attacks. So interesting to see North Korean threat actors going after something that's not, cryptocurrency exchanges, because that's kind of their usual MO. But still, kind of makes sense, though, especially going after a aerospace firm, as was it in this attack.
I want to shout out James. All quizzes are phishing attacks. Fair. That's a level of paranoia I can support.
Oh, yeah, here we go. What's your hacker name? Find out by writing your mother's maiden name, followed by your first pet's name, followed by what street you were born on. There you go. Where have I heard those questions before? Huh. All right. On to the next story. So this is something that's kind of predictable. We've talked about these sorts of attacks before, but never powered by AI. But when we're looking at the companies that are adopting AI first, it is search companies.
Right.
So Bing has been one of the companies at the forefront of empowering ChatGPT with the connection to the internet. So if you have ChatGPT 3 or 4, I think we're on 4, then it still can't access the internet. It was enabled for a while. They pulled the plug on it because it was doing sketchy stuff. It was doing things that they didn't like. It was showing information that looked legitimate but wasn't, and and they realized it was too risky, and they basically were just like, we're not doing this anymore. Microsoft was like, we're not pulling this. Like, it's going to stay up. And as a result, some of the attacks we've seen before that were targeting search results are actually applicable here as well. So when you ask Bing's AI a question, it will do a Bing search. And that includes getting back advertisements that people paid for.
Mhm.
So if I'm a threat actor and I want to start impacting the results that people are seeing using this Bing AI, I can buy advertising for the search results that the AI is going to run on behalf of the person that's asking the question.
Mhm.
And then the results they get back are going to be tainted by these ads that I put in. Now, of course, it does say something that it's a supported or like it's a a
Right.
sponsored result, but it doesn't say it's an ad. A sponsored result, an ad, like
Right.
it's kind of confusing. So the average person is still interpreting these as like a genuinely highly ranked result, like a high confidence result.
Mhm.
And as a result, they're willing to go to some of these websites that are actually malicious. So here we have an exchange where somebody says, I want to download an advanced IP scanner. It does a search, and then the malicious ad is what comes up to the top as a suggestion for
Mhm.
where to download it. So that's a pretty simple pipeline from
Yeah.
asking an AI system a question to getting a malicious piece of software downloaded on your desktop.
Yeah. Pretty straightforward. Uh, we've seen this with the malicious ads for years. It's just, hey, a new delivery mechanism.
Yeah.
Nothing super complicated. It's just smart social engineering or smart malicious ad placement.
Yeah. And the whole point of these companies is for you to give them money and then
Right.
your advertisement or your search result to pop up to the top of what people are looking for.
Mhm.
So that capability is powerful. I mean, you can definitely use that to attack people that are using traditional search or the underlying search that the AI is doing here in
Right.
order to provide responses. So people might think that the AI is better or smarter, but no, it can absolutely be tricked because it is also a slave to capitalism. It also has to take some of these paid advertisements
Mhm.
first and recommend them as though they're a good idea, even though it's a paid malicious
Mhm.
kind of like watering hole attack.
Yeah.
All right, so this is an interesting case.
Yeah.
When you're investigating a scam, you're probably going to be running, like scans or documenting evidence or doing other sorts of research that is going to put you in contact with infrastructure. Now, infrastructure is obviously what police use to investigate a crime. So if you've identified a hot piece of infrastructure, then looking at all the people that are accessing it is a pretty surefire way to figure out who is involved. So, a security researcher who had been doing an investigation of a crypto scam was returning to the United States when border agents sent him to secondary screening and served him with a grand jury subpoena demanding that he testify in a case revolving the scam that he had been investigating. So,
Mhm.
as like somebody who had been looking into it, it seems like the police got ahead of him and
Right.
finished the investigation, arrested the people, and then we're going after anybody else who was involved in the infrastructure. So I think that all of us, like I personally have gotten like an obvious scam or a link that's like,
Sure.
clearly a piece of like malicious infrastructure and started digging into it. I
Mhm.
want to see like where is this sending to? Where is it hosted? Are there any other things hosted? I'll do a scan of the IP address. Like if there's something there, like maybe I'll check to see if it allows me to just go right in without logging
Mhm.
in. So being in contact with the infrastructure of a scam is something that a lot of us hackers don't really think about because we do
Right.
it either if we don't do it often, we just assume that it's okay to do this. But it's interesting to see that you can actually get wrapped up in an investigation by like touching this infrastructure. And in this case, because the researcher, it's what they do for work, this is
Right.
like part of something that they're known for. They weren't thinking to like conceal their IP address and
Right.
act like they had something to hide here. Most researchers, I think, probably wouldn't if they were just
Right.
investigating something and they didn't suspect that it was being actively investigated
Right.
by the government. So yeah, like eventually they were able to get the subpoena quashed when they were able to like explain like why
Right.
they
Yeah.
were doing this research. But yeah, this was a pretty serious sounding
Yeah.
subpoena. We command you. Yeah.
It's
So
I, I
and then
mean,
threatening to place you in contempt of court.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is to a certain extent this is pretty chilling for security researchers. It has that effect of getting wrapped up in it. At least there was a positive outcome. He could document that he was a researcher, but it also goes to show that for some of this research, you need to have, good OPSEC too. Maybe use a VPN. We're doing some of this, use a virtual machine, isolate yourself. Not, his mistake was, hey, he just hit it from his home network. right?
Yeah.
And don't obviously do anything malicious, but VPNs are important for a number of reasons, not just for privacy from, your ISP spying on you or whoever.
Yeah. So here, anyway, it seems like the logs were what kind of caused the whole investigation to go his way. But I think any of us could be like caught up in this if we, realize that we're being scammed and then try to like look into it to find out like what's going on. So, yeah, crazy. Something that I myself worry about sometimes just based on the field I'm in. Fortunately, I don't do a lot of investigations, but I will just pop off my own investigation if someone sends me like a scam link sometimes. So, yeah, interesting and kind of scary to see how wide of a net some of these investigations can cast. All right. So this is another one of the images I truly love. Thank you, Computer, for using like Midjourney for these. Like I used to be so bored by these, but all right. So what is this? What is going on here? So Pipel, which is a package management system for Python libraries that allows you to easily import updated versions of libraries your project depends on, has been hit with a series of attacks that are adding updates that are often like typo squatting updates that import malicious packages and exfiltrate important information. So the long and short of this is you'll have an update that's pushed that changes one of the import libraries for an important project. So it'll make like a minor change or fix or something, and then it'll also change an import library to something that looks the same, but actually imports from a different repository. And this different repository is malicious. So the goal here is for these updates to be accepted, merged, and then brought into a bunch of different people's repositories, infecting them with the malicious dependency and making it easy for a threat actor to take advantage of one mistake by one developer to spread to lots of other victims. So these 7 distinct attacks have been active over the past several months. And it is something that anybody who uses Pipel should be very careful of. Like one downstream developer making decisions about like merging like contributions may be the difference between a package being fine and getting infected. So it's just like there's so little control for people sometimes to be able to catch these updates as they are merged. So just be very careful if you're using Pipel to maintain your project. It's something that has been under active attack, and this is a well-known threat at this point because it's just so easy to do, and a lot of people have been trying it. So it's one of those things where like it costs nothing to try, and if you succeed, like it really can get a lot of like boxes infected by propagating so quickly. So these package managers have been under almost constant attack in the last several years. So if you use Pipel, if you have packages that automatically update their dependencies, this is a threat vector that you need to think about. All right, next up. So we were talking like last week about how startling it was that that Microsoft Paint had added transparencies. And I was joking to my friend like last night, and is like, there's actually a guy at Microsoft that wakes up every morning and it's just like, how do I improve Microsoft Paint? Which most people thought was a completed project for several decades at this point. So everybody thought Microsoft Paint was perfect. It defined its purpose. It wasn't trying to do more than it could do. And now it seems like Microsoft is showering attention onto Microsoft Paint. And we're suddenly getting AI-powered Paint co-creator. So this is being rolled out to insiders, but they're really going ham on Paint. First transparencies, now they're slapping an AI behind it. I guess we'll see how useful this is. But I can admit that it's useful. Now it also has content filtering, so it's supposed to safeguard against accidentally creating stuff. But frankly, one of the most annoying things of like Bing or whatever else image creator is like if you create something and want to modify it, you have to download it and drag it into something. The fact you can create it natively is something we're seeing kind of trending. Adobe is also trying to add like generative AI to a lot of their products. So we'll see. I'm really interested to see what's going on. I'm a little frustrated by some of the restrictions that are built into this. Not that I want to make something like harmful or bad or whatever. It's just like sometimes it'll like just latch on to particular terms or like or think certain things are worth like filtering when they're really not. And it's very confusing. So interesting to see. Don't really like that it's fully locked down, but you can expect that if they're rolling this out and like kids are going to be doodling on Paint, they're going to lock it down from some of the things that a child might type in to that image generator. that I shudder to think at. So
Yeah.
if you thought you were safe teaching kids and letting them use MS Paint, for now,
There you
you
go.
still are.
I mean, so far I've been fairly disappointed in the generative AI capabilities built in. I tried it with Adobe recently with Photoshop, like just something simple like remove a person from whatever, and I just got the weirdest
Yeah,
results.
I
Like it
got
just,
similar.
yeah, it like replaced the person with a different person, and I'm like, that's not like what is it you don't understand about the word remove?
Yeah.
Stuff
I
like that.
have not had good results with like the generative infill.
Hmm.
I've had funny results,
Oh
but
yes, yeah.
that's not exactly what I'm looking for when it comes to like a presumably cutting edge product like Adobe Photoshop. So
Right.
yeah, I'm really looking to see how these are implemented. Hopefully in the future to be a little bit more useful, because right now they're not super useful. But I will say this one sounds fun.
Yeah.
So I will probably try this out as soon as it becomes available, because I already use Bing Image Creator probably more than
Right.
anything else. Like I've managed to find ways of like working around the restrictions, and I really like the Bing Image Creator because it gives you like 100 free image
Yeah.
creations, and each creation is 4 separate images every day. So I use it constantly for like brand stuff, for ideas, for like little like diagrams, and also for making stickers. So I have to say I really am delighted by this particular image creator, even if some of the ones that have been brought to Adobe and other products maybe aren't that great yet.
Yeah.
All right. Sony is investigating a cyber attack on hacker. Multiple hacking groups are claiming responsibility.
Yes.
This is also over literally 3 gigabytes of data. So, I mean, sure, whatever, like maybe that's a lot, but it seems like one of the things that was leaked was like a PowerPoint presentation and then
Yeah.
some source files. So like, okay, like maybe those are really sensitive, but like we're previously in this show, we were talking about like 30 like terabytes of data or something.
Yeah.
So we're talking about 3 gigabytes here. Like, I guess we'll see. So Ransom VC is claiming that they are trying to sell it for $2.5 million, but they are also saying they're an extortion group, not a ransomware organization. And they said they told the reporter that they are still developing an encryptor. You guys can just buy one,
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
So Sony is not commenting on the attack. They are investigating the situation, have no further comment at this time. So we'll see. Anytime you see a darknet post or like a breach form post, like an anime avatar, like things just got serious.
Right.
Yeah. Overall, again, a relatively small amount of files, a small amount of data here. And it says it's uncompressed. So
Yeah.
yeah, but we'll see if there's more information that's being held back in exchange for that multi-million-dollar ransom they're asking for.
Right. The interesting thing, I guess, the one thing that I'll say about this is, well, James made an interesting comment. I guess we could talk about in a second too. But the fact that that they're simply ransoming it, or I'm sorry, selling it, versus bothering with encryption, which I've seen, and I think we've talked about here a whole bunch more. That the attackers are realizing that it's worth more for the second half of the double extortion to not even bother with the encryption. Just the reputational damage alone, not having your corporate sensitive information, your details, your business plans, the intellectual property leaked is worth more than whatever trouble it is to encrypt it or pay to get it back.
And it can be whitewashed a lot more easily too. I remember there was a lot of criticism over the way that Uber handled a particular incident where somebody was just basically extorting them, and
Sure.
they wrote it up as though they were paying a security researcher for legitimate
Yes.
research, and like they had to take a big step back from that, because the security community was just like, that's not research, like
Right.
that is somebody basically just demanding that you pay them, like in exchange for not leaking it. And that's exactly what the lesson that was learned from incidents like that was, like, if you are an extortion group and you're not actually breaking systems, you're going to get charged with wire fraud. You're not going to get charged with intentional damage to a computer system, which may be a lighter sentence, or it may just like make it less of a crime that's like investigated if you're not going around breaking stuff and instead you're extorting people. Like, like you're looking at the kind of damage that's caused, and like companies can cover this up or minimize the impact a lot more easily than they can of a ransomware attack. When we look at like the recent Las Vegas attacks, we have one company very publicly having their systems being taken down in broad view of the public, like affecting services and everything else, and the second making an announcement that they paid to have some data deleted. Like, you can't really compare the loss of income, and then also the visual spectacle of that sort of attack. So yeah, that's why I think a lot of these extortion groups are doing quite well, because companies feel more comfortable paying them. Now, this is funny. James's comment is hilarious, because what if this is a social engineering attack? What if the data was leaked for free on a darknet forum, or a couple groups bought the data and they were like, well, this data is useless. Let's pretend like we're an extortion group that has, several terabytes of data or whatever. And this is just a sample. Like it happens often enough, and people are familiar enough with this sort of crime that it may actually be the case that a couple smaller groups purchase data and they're trying to social engineer Sony into believing that it's actually a larger breach. That would be not very surprising, to be honest. All right, moving along. I think we've got we're a little bit over time, but we can get through some of these. So this was a head scratcher that I saw people arguing about on Twitter, and I was like, what is going on? So there was, again, Mercenary spyware. We're seeing like attacks against Chrome actively exploited. What does that mean? It gets the whole security community talking, because these are major sophisticated attacks against like basically anybody that has like an Android phone or a device that has Chrome. So Citizen Lab, anytime they're involved, it's going to be a targeted spyware campaign, because they're one of the premier research groups that are kind of discovering this sort of thing and talking about what it looks like, how to stop it. Google went ahead and classified this as a vulnerability in Chrome. That was not the case. And as I said before, a lot of the time they will lock down access or restrict access to the details of these vulnerabilities until enough people have time to update. So people don't know if this was an attempt to do that. But a lot of researchers that were tracking these developments were sounding the alarm that no, this was not a vulnerability in Chrome. This was a vulnerability in the libwebp library, which Chrome is not the only browser that uses it.
A lot of things use it.
Yeah, so it caused confusion. A lot of people were asking about why they chose to categorize it as a Chrome vulnerability rather than as a flaw in WebP. And it caused some other developers to basically not have the information they need to be able to fix this problem. So it is now a maximum severity CVE, which, by the way, Kilian, do you remember what CVE stands for? I only remember because of the Black Hat quiz that we did.
I was going to say common vulnerabilities something.
And exposures.
That's what it is.
Yeah. Exposure, like what? But anyway, so that's its name. So it is now a 10 out of 10. Like a flawless ice skating performance. Very rare to see a 10 out of 10.
I'm sorry, that just made me laugh. 10 out of 10 would exploit again. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like, so wasn't that CVE revoked? I don't know. Let me click on it.
Yeah, because I think they ended up consolidating it down when they figured out it was all the same thing. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, rejected. So it's been rejected or withdrawn. So I guess it had its flawless title removed. That's so sad. Was this also Bleeping Computer needs to update their article? But yeah, I also saw some discussion about this in InfoSec, the dying part of InfoSec Twitter, now called X. So yeah, this is something that a lot of like reverse engineers were really interested in, like kind of trying to understand or trying to see like why it had initially been miscategorized. It seems like you guys might know a little bit more than I do about the official current status of the rejected CVE. But yeah, CVE drama. Don't usually get that. So probably talk a little bit more about this next week, but just something to kind of keep your eye on if you're interested in some of these mercenary spyware style stories that have been coming out around these vulnerabilities. All right, we're almost done. So hackers are actively exploiting OpenFire in order to encrypt servers. So what is this attack? So OpenFire is an open source Java-based messaging. It's like a chat service that has been downloaded 9 million times, and it's used for secure multi-platform chat communications. This is an authentication bypass. So you can just bypass authentication. You can create an administrator account and just go to town. You can do whatever. You can control these via malicious post requests and get requests, I believe, and it impacts all OpenFire versions from 3.10, dating from 2015 all the way up to 4.7.4. They fixed the issue in these subsequent patches, but I think, and that was released in May 2023. But yeah, so far 3,000 are still running a vulnerable version. So Man, I love when like they're just like 9 million times, and then at the end of the article they're like, there's 3,000 that are actually able to be attacked. But yeah, so 3,000 is still a lot. And just one of those things that I think, for me anyway, I always think of like how businesses like have to just solve these problems. Like,
Right.
yeah, like they've got this great free third-party add-on. Like let's just do that, and then they won't update it for a couple of years,
Yep.
and then that's how they end up getting hit. Is one of these third-party services that's free, so you just don't think about it because it works. Works
Right.
fine. Like, well, why fix something that isn't broken? But if you're not diligent about updating these, this could be the key to breaking into all of your infrastructure. Oh my gosh. Let's go through. We have so little time. Okay, so let's go through the one that one of the people in the chat was talking about. So this is a case of people breaching GitHub accounts and then inserting malicious code disguised as Dependbot contributions to steal authentication secrets and passwords. So this was a campaign in July 2023. And the idea here is kind of similar to the other attack I was talking about, where attackers were getting into people's personal GitHub accounts and then trying to create fake commits titled fix that appeared to be by the user account depend bot. And the idea here is that they were trying to make fixes to the code that perform two actions: extract secrets from the targeted GitHub repository, send them to the attacker's command and control, and then modify existing JavaScript files in the breach repository to add malware that steals passwords from web form submissions and send them to the same C2 address. Yeah, so like being able to breach an account and get access to the projects that it is able to update. Sometimes you don't even need to do that. Sometimes you can breach random accounts and you can attempt to just fix these projects and be able to push malicious updates that then can spread to any projects that rely on libraries that are related to this. So, all right, we're just about out of time, aren't we? I think we're like 10 minutes over where we usually go. So
yeah,
couple stories where we weren't able to cover. Shadow Syndicate hacker group. This is kind of a breakdown of their multiple affiliations with different ransomware groups. It's speculated this is an initial access broker group to keep an eye on. Now that there's more information out about them, you can see they've exfiltrated a lot of SSH keys, and they have set up infrastructure that's been affiliated with Cactus, Royal Ransomware, Quantum, I don't know how to pronounce this one, Play, Clop, and Black Hat. So lots of affiliations there. We have the Born Ontario Child Registry data breach, which affected 3.4 million people. Speaking of Clop, this was yet another one of the MoveIt hacking sprees victim. We've been talking about this forever. It feels like this whole year we've been talking about MoveIt like hacking fallout. And this is another example where so many people were using the software, and Clop has been very slow and steady in going through and going after these victims one by one by one. So this is an exploitation case. It's not a ransomware case. So you're going to see more of these data breaches, in this case affecting a lot of information, including full name, home address, postal code, date of birth, health card numbers, and then also sensitive information like lab test results that were exposed in this data set.
The scariest thing I think though too is I think a lot of it was from like newborns also. So like, it's disgusting. I mean, if they had anybody in the Clop group who has any remaining morals, just delete this, please. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, there have been groups that have been more selective about the types of organizations they go after. Like they won't go after medical organizations, whatever else, but it seems like Clop is not among them. So yeah.
Oh man.
Last one I was going to talk about was, again, love the big journey here. Some of this malware that's been used in government attacks. This is a UAE affiliated cyber group, Fruity Armor or Project Raven or Stealth Falcon. There's a lot of names for this group. Has surfaced and has been using some interesting new malware. Again, I think we're just a little bit over. So if you want to check that out, that was the last story we had this week. But yeah, so lots going on this week with the Raspberry Pi 5 happening, with the security researcher getting pulled aside for just touching, scam infrastructure while investigating it. Lots and lots of stuff happening here. Unfortunately, a lot of ransomware and exploitation attacks as well. And there's definitely been an uptick in exploitation as like a business model, especially with these initial access brokers. and trying to make as much money as possible. And sometimes just turning it over to people who might buy it at a low price and just exfiltrate data rather than trying to do anything fancy and aligning themselves with like one of these ransomware gangs. So interesting to see the rise of exploitation gangs, how important these initial exploit brokers are becoming in the cybercrime infrastructure, and then just the sheer like pace of attacks that we're seeing recently has it feels like there's a new one every day. Although it also feels like a quarter of them are just like fallout from the Move It attacks. All right, so that's all we have for this week. Thank you to everybody in the chat this week. It was very lively. And of course, Kilian, thank you for joining us again and fulfilling the prophecy of your return.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been great to be back. You know, I missed talking about all the security news. I missed, although not being depressed by talking about the security news. So got to balance the factors.
Absolutely, absolutely. So as always, a shout out to our mutual employer and also sponsor on the stream, Varonis. This week, I think I shouted this out earlier as well, but I just wanted to highlight some of the other great content that has been coming out of the team this week. If you go to varonis.com/Kody, you can check out the latest episode of Speed Data. So this is a show where our own Macon has been interviewing people from all over the security spectrum. So there's been CISOs, there's been all sorts of interesting security people, but my favorite so far has been somebody who's actually involved in our own team. So have you actually met Sawar?
No, not in person.
Yeah, so seeing some people on our own security team come up and talk about their careers, all the things they're interested in, and how they got into cybersecurity was really great. So if you want to check out a great piece of content and also support our stream, you can go to varonis.com/Kody, that's Kody, and check out the latest episode of Speed Data this week. That was really cool. So, all right, that's all we have for the show today. Thank you again to everybody that joined us. And if you have any questions for the upcoming stream, you can leave them on the YouTube channel. That's Security Forward, Security FWD. Or you can go to nugget.lol, nugget.lol, and leave it on our Discord server. And also get notified if we're running late or, like whatever else there. So, all right, everyone, we will see you next week. Goodbye.